So if you saw yesterday's video, you know that I ended up going down a major rabbit hole the day before yesterday where I was looking for clips that showed Jenn's lies, and I basically ended up with more than an hour's worth of just clips, meaning that I had more than one video's worth of clips. Yesterday I looked at what I called Jenn's psychic abilities, where she essentially told detectives exactly what went down, and Stearns' movements in terms of transporting Maddie's body, going back to Maddie's body, all that sort of stuff. To me, it was a little bit too uncanny, especially combined with her statement of she didn't want to speak to Chris and Deborah because of what she knew. Well, yeah, that was very interesting. So in this video, I'm focusing on one single lie. Well, essentially one single lie, which she consistently made through every interview that she did. Now, the thing with this is that she even said this in the derivative immunity interview, and it's got me somewhat baffled because the detectives gave her so many opportunities to fix what she had said wrong, and yet she didn't. So I'm trying to figure out what's actually going on here. So this relates to the day Maddie went missing, and Jenn had her blood work appointment, and then according to her, she came back to the house and Stefan was already at the house when she got back, and they had this long conversation in her bedroom. He reset his phone and then he headed off, and she waited around until when she went to go and collect Maddie from school. That's Jenn's story. There's a major problem with that story though, and I'll get to that later on in the video. Some of you may already have figured it out yourselves, but that's the main part of that story that I have issues with. But there's a number of things along the way that have got me curious. Jenn saying that Stefan was at the house when she got back from her blood work appointment is an utter lie. And she only went out of the house 2 times. She went for her blood work appointment, and then she went to pick up Maddie. After the blood work appointment, she went straight home. After going to pick up Maddie, she supposedly went straight to her mother's office. You shouldn't mix up the 2 occasions. Either way, I can't understand how she's saying that she came home and Stearns was there. And detectives they all question her in different ways, which should prompt her to come out with her classic Jenn Soto, "Oh, just kidding." But she never does. So I'm just wondering what's going on here. So I'm going to go through clips from each of the interviews. I'm going to point out the way that detectives are trying to prompt her, and also point out a few irregularities in what she's actually saying. So let's jump in. I've got these in consecutive order, so they're basically in the order that she was interviewed. So let's jump into the first one.
How did you get back home for the day?
Let me check something. Okay, so my appointment was at 10:15, and it took them 45 minutes to see me. So I didn't get home until 11:15, 11:30.
Mm-hmm. And was Stefan back at that point in time?
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
I can't remember.
And then what did the day look like after that? It's fine.
So I did my blood work, then I came back, and then I just waited. I waited for the rest of the day until 2:30 to leave. I wait in the car line, so I'm first in line.
Okay.
So this is the first time that they've discussed what happened through the day. And when they ask her if, when she got back from her blood appointment, if Stefan was there, she responds with, I'm going to say yes. Now, when I hear someone say, I'm going to say yes, and I'm guessing it's a real Florida thing because I've heard a number of people say this in their interviews, but to me, the wording of it suggests uncertainty. It's almost, well, it is, it's a partial sentence. I'm going to say yes, but I might be wrong. Or I'm going to say yes, but there is an inferred but there. I'm going to say yes, but don't take me on my word for it. So here she is, in this instance, not so sure if Stefan was home when she got back from her blood appointment. And they follow up with a question, what did your day look like after that? And there's no more discussion of Stefan after that. She basically says, she goes back to, I had my blood appointment, I came home, and then I basically waited around until I went to pick up Maddie. No conversation there about having any conversation with Stefan, about seeing Stefan at the house, about resetting the phone, any of that stuff. So it makes it sound like she didn't actually see Stefan at all, because Stefan isn't included in the narrative at all here. Now, I would imagine that when you're having a conversation like this and someone asks you something and you're not certain about it, afterwards you're going to flip that around in your mind and you're going to try and remember what the answer actually is. Now, you would think that most people would be capable of visualising themselves coming home to an empty house. Her flatmates were both at work. Stefan was out doing what Stefan was doing. So it shouldn't have been too hard to visualise coming back to an empty house. So you would think that after this one interview, she would be able to say, no, Stefan came back after me. But that's not what happens here.
And then what time did you get home again? Was it around 11?
Let me see. I'm going to say around 11:15.
Because I think if I heard you right the first time, you got home at 11 and you and Stefan were both here, and then he left to go to the vape store again?
I did see him, yeah.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I had that, because like I said, sometimes you forget to write things down, and I don't want to misremember.
Now, I'm thinking that may have possibly been Detective Hunt again. But either way, this detective is brilliant. That was so subtle that you may have actually missed what they were trying to do there. So, this is the second interview, and he's brought it up again and asked her about her blood work appointment and if Stefan was at the house when she got home. And this time she says, I did see him, yeah. Throwing the yeah on the end, to me, sounds like she's trying to be convincing. She knows she didn't see him. the way she's saying that, the tone of her voice, I don't believe that she actually does believe that she saw him. And yet she's saying to this detective, I did see him, yeah. Well, she didn't see him. And the detective is actually giving her an out here, without actually calling her out. He actually says that he had to ask because he didn't want to misremember. So he was giving her an out, essentially saying it's just human to sometimes forget things and remember things wrong. But she didn't bite. She didn't turn around and say, actually, no, he wasn't there when I got home. Which would have been the right thing to do had she not had anything to hide. But I still can't figure out why she needs to have him at home at that particular point in time. Now, just to help you out the timeline here, this is when he was actually out at the vape shop. So she even says to them in various interviews, she tells them which vape shop he went to and suggests that by her telling them which one he went to, they can get video footage. Now, if they're getting video footage, they're going to know exactly what time he was there. And yet she's still saying right through that he was there when she got home from her appointment. Okay, so next we have the legendary Myra Tagler taking a crack at Jenn. So let's see how that one went.
I
had an appointment,
I had a
right?
doctor's appointment at like 10:15,
Uh-huh.
but they took a while. And then by the time they did my blood work and whatever, I think I got home somewhere between 11 and 11:15.
Okay. When you got back, was Stefan here?
I'm pretty sure he was, yeah.
What was he doing?
Just sitting in my room. At my computer desk on his phone.
Okay. What did you guys do?
So once again, Jenn is expressing doubt without realising she's doing so. I'm pretty sure he was. Meaning that she's not 100% sure he was. She's just pretty sure he was. So she's not giving a definitive answer yet again. And like I said, I can't understand how she could, in Jenn's words, misremember this. Now, what Detective Tagler does here is actually quite good. What she's actually doing is basically getting Jenn to tap into her sensory experiences. So when it comes to figuring out memories and trying to figure out, what happened, then you have sensory memories. So you might see something, but you will hear something at the same time, you will experience something at the time, you may do something at the same time. So you've got your tactile, you've got your visual, you've got your audio. And she tries to tap into those. She says, what was he doing? That's your visual memory. So she's trying to trigger a visual memory there with Jenn, to see if Jenn backs back and says, well, actually, no, I don't remember actually physically seeing him because I didn't see him doing anything. But instead of Jenn turning around and going, actually, I was wrong, he wasn't there, she comes up with, well, he was just sitting in my room at my computer desk on his phone. There's this break in the middle of it. He was just sitting in my room, and she's trying to come up with what to say next. You can tell this is an invented story that she's coming up with on the spot. And I don't understand why she didn't just back down and say, no, actually he wasn't there. Why the need to come up with this story? And this detective is good. I mean, that is, she's basically cued her for a visual memory. Sounds like he's being a bit of a spud, just like her at that point in time. So Mr. Potato and Mrs. Potato are basically just sitting in Mrs. Potato's room, doing nothing while he's looking at his phone. Or at least Mrs. Potato walks in the door and sees Mr. Potato sitting at her desk looking at his phone. And the detective, I think she realised that this was all just a load of bull. Because then she followed up with, what did you guys do? So that should be prompting a different type of sensory memory. If you're doing something, you're going to be having tactile experiences, probably audio visual experiences. That's different from just walking in and seeing something. Now you are experiencing something. She's giving Jenn another chance to see if there really is a memory there and back down from what is basically an inaccurate account. But instead of turning around and saying, actually no, I was wrong, Jenn continues to push her story.
We chatted for a little bit. I asked him what had happened because he had called me earlier at 10. Let me see. Pretty sure he called me around 10:18.
What did he call you for?
To let me know, that...
Now the detective has quite skillfully hijacked Jenn's narrative. Her original narrative is that when they were sitting around in the house, she asked him what happened. That's a very specific thing to be asking someone. What happened? When you say that, that infers that something significant has happened. So to me that was an immediate red flag, and I think many people have commented on how much of a red flag that is. And then from that she goes, because he rang me while I was out. But she answered the phone when he rang her while she was out, and according to the timeline, if you've looked at any of the timeline videos I did, they spoke for 8 minutes. And I hadn't thought about it at the time when I was doing the timeline, but 8 minutes, you can actually convey a lot of information during that time. So he rang her while she was out. And she's just about to go into more of her narrative, and the detective stops her and questions her. And when she asks Jenn, and what did he call you for, it stops Jenn in her tracks. She's like, to let me know, so now she's got to come up with a story for what he rang her for. Now, you would think that you could remember. This is only the day after. Something was important enough for him to ring her while she was waiting for her appointment, and for them to be on the phone for 8 minutes. You'd think she would have some recollection of it. But she's stalling for time here. We know that phone call occurred. So what is it that she has to say occurred during that phone call?
He didn't go to McDonald's as planned. He had asked her multiple times if she wanted to stop at McDonald's, because that was the plan the night before, that they were going to wake up early. He was going to take her to McDonald's, do like a special McDonald's breakfast, and then drop her off at school early because she wanted to get there a little early. But on his way to school, she was very sleepy and wanted to sleep in the car. And she said she did not want to do McDonald's. She just wanted to be dropped off.
Okay.
Also to let me know that he left his phone at home, because I had called him multiple times and he hadn't picked up. He had left his phone at home by accident. He had went to the vape shop, but they didn't open on time, so he had waited for quite a while in front of the vape shop. They didn't open, so he left and came back and we hung out a little bit, and then I think he left again to the vape shop to go buy what he needed.
Okay.
Do you want the name of the vape shop?
Now, she starts once again with that very, very well rehearsed story. Talking about him telling her they went to Macca's, Maddie didn't want Macca's, yada yada yada. Then talking about, well, he also told me that he'd left without his phone. He went to the vape store, but the vape store was closed. So then he came back home and we hung out, and he went to the vape store a bit later on. What has she done here? She forgot that she was describing a phone call. She's attributed all these things as being things that he said during the phone call, but during this whole narrative, she's switched back to this occurring in her bedroom, essentially. She's basically gone back to the narrative of it being in her bedroom and him heading back out later to go to the vape shop. When of course the reality is, when she arrived back from her appointment, he was actually out at the vape shop. So, in this instance, she's still not given any information about them doing anything at the house. She's relayed a phone call, which somehow morphs into being back at the house, which I find very, very interesting. So let's see where she goes from this in subsequent interviews.
So I got back from my blood work appointment anytime between, I'll say 11:15, 11:30, so sometime around that time.
And was he already here?
Yes.
Okay. What did you guys talk about when you got home?
What happened this morning?
What do you say? What happened this morning?
So this time she's absolutely, definitely sure, essentially. When asked this time if he was already here, she says yes. No, nothing else, not yes, I think so, yes, I believe so, or any of the things that she's used before, just a straight out yes. And then he wants to know about, what they were talking about, and she once again comes out with what happened this morning. Well, let's be real. According to what she's told us, the only thing that happened this morning that would have been of significance to her would be him going into her room to collect the dog. When you say what happened this morning, that indicates a shared experience to me. It's not what he did this morning or what happened with him and Maddie this morning. It's what happened this morning. That's a shared experience between them. So you would expect it to be a discussion of this supposed story about him going in to collect the dog. Not him talking about taking Maddie to school. It's not a shared experience. But that's not where she goes with this. First of all, when he queries, even he's picked up on the wordage there, but that's a really odd thing to say. And he queries, what do you mean by what happened this morning? And I think she realises that she's said it wrong, because she lets out one of her classic Jenn sighs. And then we get the same story.
He's like, we had a good morning. We made really good time. Maddie got ready super quick. We were out the door super quickly. I was super impressed with our time. I tried convincing Maddie to go have McDonald's breakfast a few times, but she changed her mind and decided she didn't want to. She just wanted to sleep in the car. And the thing is, the night before, we had discussed, oh, Maddie, maybe he should leave a little bit earlier than normal so that you can go get breakfast with him at McDonald's. That would be a really cool day to start a Monday right after your birthday, having McDonald's at breakfast. And she's like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. So they were supposed to have gone to McDonald's, but he told me they didn't. He told me he had left his phone because I had no, he had already told me this earlier, that he had left his phone.
So did you notice that now this conversation that they supposedly had about him going to Macca's with Maddie has now occurred at the house, not over the phone? Then she also says, and he told me he forgot his phone, and she's like, oh no, he already told me that. So she's having trouble trying to fit where she puts her narrative. And that's because nothing happened at the house at that point in time. There was no conversation at the house because he wasn't there. So she's just trying to insert this conversation, which I'm guessing may have in fact occurred over the phone, with them trying to concoct this story between them. And why do I say that they concocted it between them? Because that's a really detailed narrative, this whole wanting to go to Macca's, she wasn't hungry, she was sleeping, turned around, went back, yada yada yada. Jenn pretty much gives his story. Now, if I were to give you a narrative with that many details in it, and you were to then go and relay it to someone in your household, chances are you're not going to do it verbatim. You're not going to tell them exactly how I've told you, because I've put in so many details that you're going to forget some of those details by the time you turn around and retell it. And then as you retell it more times, you're going to gradually put it into your own words. Unless it's, of course, a story that you've concocted with me. We've sat down, we've figured it out together, and we've got it word for word, which is what it sounds like to me, because her and Stefan have got that story down word for word. Whether they came up with that over the phone at that time, or whether they did it at a later date or a later time, don't know, but I'm pretty certain it didn't occur. But right here, she's trying to say that that conversation occurred in the house, when Stefan wasn't in the house, when previously she said they had this conversation on the phone. She's getting her narrative confused, and as they say, when you lie, you've got to have a damn good memory.
What else did he talk to me We sat in my room for a while, hung out. He discussed having to reset his phone even though he didn't want to, or no, not reset his phone. He discussed needing to update his phone because he's been avoiding an update for so long.
Now, what's interesting here, aside from the obvious of her saying that he said that he needed to reset his phone, is that she's now moved into a time frame when they were actually both at the house together. He is recorded as having done a factory reset on his phone at 12 minutes past 12. They were both at the house at that time. So maybe there was a conversation about his phone. And I find it interesting that she slips up on 2 separate occasions about him resetting his phone. But here's what's also interesting. She has this supposed memory where they're having a conversation about them going to Macca's, about him forgetting his phone. Then she remembers, oh, that's right, he said that to me over the phone, although she didn't say that specifically, but she uses that as, oh no, he told me that already. And then she goes on to remember him resetting his phone. But the thing is, in between this first lot of stuff that she's describing and him resetting his phone, you would think she should then recall him arriving back at the house and suddenly be like, well, hang on, actually, no, he got back after me. But she never mentions this. She was home for a good 20 minutes before he got back. She would have seen him get back. And, you know, what's Jenn going to be doing? She's not going to be busy doing laundry or vacuuming floors or anything. No, Jenn, like I've said before, is half potato. And as some brilliant subscriber mentioned, probably also half sloth. So this potato sloth was probably just sitting in her bedroom doing absolutely nothing when he came back. Maybe on her phone or something. But I think she would have noticed him coming back to the apartment. And what she's relaying here is something that actually did occur. And yet she hasn't transitioned at all and suddenly gone, hang on, that stuff that I was talking about before didn't happen with him here, like, you know, before him returning or anything. She's saying all this occurred in one single period of time, from her returning from her appointment through till when he left later on to run errands. And she's completely leaving out the fact that he wasn't there when she got home.
Did Stefan know about your doctor appointment on Monday? Did you tell him what your plans were on Sunday?
I'm not sure when I told him. I must have told him Sunday night, yeah, or Sunday, because there's no way I could have told him Monday morning if he didn't have his phone on him, and I didn't really talk to him that morning.
So it seems like that half an hour period on the Sunday night, they achieved a heck of a lot. Firstly, you had Jenn apparently eating on her own in her room, having her pub sub. Don't know where Maddie and Stefan were at the time, but she says that she ate that alone in her room. Then you also have the three of them apparently watching Sister Act together, but running out of time, they didn't get to watch the whole movie. And then on top of that, they had this big long conversation where they were talking about Maddie's party, and she was telling Jenn all about her party. and they were counting Maddie's money and talking about her trinkets that she got. And then on top of that, she also had Maddie pick out her clothes for the next day, prepare her drink bottle, and she even apparently had a conversation with Maddie about what clothes she's picked out. And now they also had a conversation about Jenn having a doctor's appointment the following day. All this within a half-hour period of time on the Sunday night, according to Jenn. Because she says, well, we didn't really talk, or we didn't have a chance to talk, or whatever it was, on the Monday morning, and he didn't have his phone with him. So we must have had that conversation Sunday night. It's possible that when he rang her at 20 past 10 or just before 20 past 10, that maybe then he was ringing her to say, I forgot my phone, you rang me, where are you? And she said, I'm at a doctor's appointment. Or maybe they actually had a big long conversation that morning before he supposedly took Maddie to school. But something about this part of the story just doesn't seem to quite fit. How did Stefan know that she was at this doctor's appointment? Was it one of the multitude of things that they did in that half-hour period of time on the Sunday night? Or was there a conversation between them other than him simply going in, collecting the dog and saying go back to sleep on the Monday morning? It seems to me that there have been multiple conversations between them prior to when she had that doctor's appointment. Or there's just something not fitting here at all. I can't quite wrap my head around it.
Had my appointment. I finished there sometime between 11:15. Then I headed home. When I got home, Stefan was there. I had talked to him a little bit earlier while I was waiting for my blood work appointment, and he let me know, oh, I'm so sorry, I left my phone at home by accident. School, everything went over great. She got up super early, got up really quick. She slept most of the way in the car. I asked her multiple times if she wanted McDonald's, but she said no. Because that was the plan, was that they were going to stop at McDonald's that morning and go get breakfast.
Okay.
He said that he had gone to the vape shop and they were closed and they didn't open. So he waited there for a while and left, and then said he was going to go back later.
So now she's quite clear. When I got home, Stefan was there. And then she goes backwards again to this supposed conversation that she had while she was waiting for her appointment. And she once again says all those things happened in the phone conversation. He said that he forgot his phone. He spoke about the whole Macca's fiasco, and he also supposedly went to the vape shop, waited forever, which by the way was about 5 minutes, and was going to go back later. So she's now put that all back into the phone call as opposed to being part of the conversation while they were just hanging out together at the house. So she's really struggling here with what fits where in her story, because she's added onto the story without coming up with details to fit into that part of the fake narrative.
When when I saw him at the house, everything was normal. We were chatting, we were talking, he was acting normal. He was sitting in my computer chair just messing around on his phone. While we were hanging out, he mentioned something along the lines of, "Oh man, I've been avoiding this phone update for a really long time. I should probably update it now." And I said, "Do it. Don't avoid it. Just get it over with." And he updates his phone and then tells me, "Oh my god, I don't know what button I just pressed, but I just factory reset my entire phone." And I said, "How the hell does that happen? That gives you options now when you reset your phone?" He goes, "Yeah, apparently I wasn't paying attention and I just pressed the button and it happened." And I said, "Oh, that's unfortunate. That sucks."
So that description of what happened when he reset his phone just sounds so contrived to me. I'd love to know what other people think. But to me, she's given way too much detail. Not only is she giving way too much detail, but the way she describes her response doesn't fit with what has occurred. If I were to say to you, "Oh crap, I just accidentally did a factory reset on my phone," you would straight away imagine the monumental situation there. Holy crap, you've just lost everything. You're not going to be just like in this sing-song, "Well, that's unfortunate. Well, that sucks." Like, no. Both of you are going to be reacting to the fact that you've just lost everything off your phone. That's a major thing. Now, I've never actually done an accidental factory reset because it's not humanly possible. But let's go into their fantasy world for just one moment and think about how you would react if you did a factory reset on your phone accidentally, or if your partner did a factory reset on your phone accidentally. My first response would probably be, "That's a load of BS. You can't accidentally factory reset your phone. What are you talking about? What's going on?" But no, Jen doesn't react like that. And let's say you do have potatoes for brains, so you don't actually realise that it's impossible to do a factory reset accidentally. You should still be acting in a horrified manner. She's not expressing any horror whatsoever there. So to me, that suggests that the idea of resetting his phone was something that they discussed between them. And that is alarming to me because that means that she knew that there were things on his phone that needed to be gotten rid of. But just the way she's saying that part of her story, the way she's conveying him resetting his phone, really doesn't ring true to me. I'm sure there's more cues there that show why that is not true, and I'd love to hear people's observations about what it is about that particular part of her narrative, that what was it that made you think that's a complete utter lie, because I'd love to hear other people's perspective on it. But to me, it's just not real. So if we look at what she's telling us now, essentially all she's saying that occurred in this supposedly long period of time when they were both at the house together is them having a conversation about him needing to reset, oh no, not reset, update his phone. that occurring and then her having this very ungenuine sounding reaction to it. Because she's once again talked about the other things as being what occurred during that 8-minute phone call while she was waiting for her appointment. Now, if we move on to the 18th of April, this is the derivative immunity interview. And they made it quite clear at the start of that interview that anything she said there, providing she was truthful, meant that she couldn't be prosecuted. And they basically said, you know, if you've lied to us in the past, that's dirt under the bridge, I think they said. So they're giving her an out to tell the truth. If you tell us the truth in this particular interview and it is a contradiction to something you said previously, we can't come after you for that unless we prove it independently. Basically, that's what they've said to her. They've said, if you lie in this interview, you know, that's on you, basically. So you would expect that she's going to be truthful in this interview. So let's have a look at what she has to say once again about this period of time.
And you had a 10:15 appointment for a blood draw?
Yes.
And did you go anywhere else prior to getting to your appointment for your blood draw? Did you go directly there or not directly there? That's basically the question.
Oh, I went directly there.
All right. And after your blood draw, did you go directly back home?
Yes.
About what time did you get home?
Sometime between 11:15 and 11:30.
Did you have any other appointments or doctor's appointments later in the day?
I was supposed to have had one, but I canceled it
When did you cancel it?
that same day
Why did you cancel it?
because it was a $350 Botox appointment that I didn't want to spend the money on. I changed my mind last second.
So he's basically asked her about her blood draw appointment that morning and then said, did you go out for any other reason? And she's talking about, well, I was supposed to have that Botox appointment, but I cancelled it. What he has established here is that she only left the house that one time. She went directly to her appointment and she came directly back to the house. She did not leave the house again until she went to collect Maddie. That's significant, and that will become apparent as we go on.
When you get home from your blood draw appointment, is there anybody else at your home?
When I get home from blood draw. Yes, Stefan was home.
All right. And can you describe what he's wearing, what he's doing, his demeanor, what's going on?
So what he has done is basically established that there's only the one time that she came home. She can't be confusing this experience with a different experience later on in the day because she only returned home that one time. And from that, from establishing the fact that there's nothing else that she can confuse it with, he asks her, was there anyone at home when you got home? So he was not even trying to give her a leading question here, other than asking if anyone was at home. He did not say, now you previously said Stefan was there when you got home. He was giving her a chance to rethink this question. And she comes out again with, yeah, Stefan was there when I got home. So what does he do? He goes for the sensory experiences. He wants her to tap into that memory by accessing other sensory experiences, and also to really dig into it and see if it was a real memory. First thing he asks is, what was he wearing? But he doesn't stop there. He asks her, what was he doing? What was his demeanour? What was going on? There's a whole manner of things there that should prompt a real memory if it occurred, or if suddenly you draw a blank and you think, well, hang on, no, I can't remember, I can't actually visualize it, I can't recall the experience. And see, when you ask someone what someone's demeanour was, that's really good, because that is actually tapping into physical experiences, emotional experiences. If someone's in a foul mood, then you remember that, because you're remembering physical reactions. You would have had a physical reaction to someone being in a foul mood. Or if they're in a really happy mood, you're also going to have a physical reaction to that. When someone's in a happy mood, generally they lift you up, and it puts you into a happy mood too. So he's asking all these things that should prompt a genuine memory, if there's a genuine memory, or should show her that, hang on, no, that never happened. Basically, he's trying to ask her to relive that moment in time, or that period of time, which of course she can't do. So she should, particularly given this particular interview where she's supposed to be being truthful, she should at this point in time go, actually no, he got home after me. But she doesn't do that.
I can't recall what he's wearing. It might be a red shirt with a graphic on it.
Okay.
So the response that he gets from her is a quiet response. It's not a fluent response. There's pauses. There's one of her big sighs at the end of it. I can't recall what he was wearing. It might have been a red shirt with a pattern on it, or whatever she said. But her voice is lower there. He's taken her away from her standard narrative. And because of that, she's struggling.
He's sitting in my bedroom on my desk.
Prior to you getting there, he's in your room? Or is that where you guys go to talk?
He was hanging out there in my room.
Okay.
My room is kind of like the general hangout spot.
Okay.
I walk into my room. He's sitting there on the computer chair. He's talking, acting normal.
So she was just getting back into the swing of this so very well rehearsed story, and he interrupted her again. And he wanted to clarify that Stefan was actually there when she arrived back. And she didn't give him a direct answer. She doesn't say, yes, that was prior to when I got there. She just says, yes, he was hanging out in my room. Which is actually a very different answer. It's not being affirmative to, yes, that occurred before I got there. But he's taken the wind out of her sails again, and she's once again faltering and trying to pick up where she left off.
Asking about the morning and how everything went, and that he let me know the errands that he ran that morning or what he was up to.
And what did he say he was up to?
He said he had dropped Maddie off at school and then afterwards went to a vape shop so he can buy vaping things.
Okay.
but that the store wasn't open, so he waited a long time for them to open. They never did. So he drove around, killed time, and then eventually made it back to my house at like 10:20.
Okay, so I've just noticed that she's altered the story here. She's completely taken Macca's out of the equation. And I think the reason for that is because all the other things that Stefan supposedly did don't involve Jenn somehow. But on previous occasions when they were talking about Stefan taking Maddie to Macca's for breakfast, Jenn essentially says it was her idea for him to take Maddie there. In this interview, when her neck's on the line basically, she doesn't want them to question her again about Macca's. She's left it out of the narrative completely. And I think that's why she's faltering so much here and having trouble getting into a rhythm, because it's just completely messed up how the story goes for her. So instead she goes on about him driving around a bit and then going to the vape store and that being closed. So that's interesting. I hadn't actually spotted that before. But definitely, after trying to convince them that he was there, she's now really struggling because she's had to leave out parts of the original narrative that are going to implicate her.
When later on, when I got home and he was home, we started discussing, or he started telling me that he was going to go back out to run a few more errands in a little bit down 192, and he gave me the name of a few stores that he might stop at, and I'm like, okay. I asked him if he wanted to meet me at my house by 2:30 so that we can go pick up Maddie from school together. And he said, yeah, he'll be back by 2:30. And I said, okay.
So was that the plan, to get her together, or was it ever discussed that he would get her alone?
The plan was for us to get her together.
Okay.
Why does she talk about him like he's a teenage son? She says that he says he's going to go out to these shops and that he gave her a list of shops that he was going to go to. But why? Did he need her permission? I mean, normally, wouldn't you say, well, I'm just going to go out to a couple of shops and just look for these things. Not, I'm going to go to this shop, then I'm going to go to this shop, then I'm going to go to this shop. It just seems really, really odd. And I can't help wondering what the heck is going on with this story. This whole part of the narrative, to me, just doesn't sit right. Something is not quite right here. And I'm not sure entirely what it is. But her speech doesn't sound natural quite often. And the narrative just, it seems stunted quite often.
All right. And so, does he leave before you leave?
Actually, before this, while we were still discussing, while we were having the conversation in my room, he did mention at one point, while he was sitting there, that he had to reboot his phone, or that he had to update his phone.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it? He had to update his phone, so I told him, stop avoiding it, do it. Like, updates take a while, like, do it. And while he was updating his phone, he said, I don't know what I did, but I just factory reset my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's weird, I didn't know that you could do that. He said, yeah, a button popped up and I pressed it and it just reset my entire phone. And I'm like, oh, that sucks.
Have you noticed it is so important to her to include that part of the story? She has to include the narrative about him resetting his phone. Why is that? To me, the most logical explanation I can think of is that she's trying to convey her innocence in that situation by bringing it up and saying that she was just there on the sidelines. She saw it happen. She's basically putting it all on him. She had nothing to do with it. This is how it happened. You have to believe me because I'm Jennifer Soto and I always tell the truth. This is what happened. He reset his phone. I saw him do it. I had nothing to do with it. I honestly believe that is why it is so important for her to continually push that part of the narrative. She has to separate herself from what has occurred there because she knows that it is a major sign of guilt for him to have factory reset his phone while Maddie was missing.
So does he leave before you do to go do these errands he was telling you about?
Yes, he does leave.
Do you stay at home until it's time to go get Madeline?
Yes.
Do you hear anything from Stefan while he's out doing these errands?
No.
No, of course not, because once again he left his phone behind. And it should be, that question should actually prompt her to say, no, because after he left I noticed that he left his phone sitting next to my computer. She never mentions this, which is kind of interesting given that she was aware that Maddie left her phone at home, even though Maddie's phone was in Maddie's bedroom, out of sight on her dresser, where basically you would have had to have walked into the room and seen the phone there to actually realise it was there. But, you know, according to her, Stefan was in her room the whole time with his phone, and then he went out to do his errands. Meaning that his phone should have been way more visible than Maddie's phone. And yet you never once hear Jenn comment on him leaving his phone behind. Only Maddie leaving her phone behind. And they've even prompted her here to give her the opportunity to say, no, I didn't hear from him because I realised after he's gone that his phone was sitting in my bedroom. Now, as I was going through that, something else occurred to me, which is not connected with this, although it sort of is. So, according to her narrative, she came home from her doctor's appointment. Stefan was already there in her bedroom, and they hung out together in her bedroom. And yet, according to her narrative where she collected, or where she saw Maddie's phone, which she, according to the footsteps recorded on Maddie's phone, she saw it, left it there and collected it only as she was leaving to collect Maddie. But apparently she saw it because she was straightening up and putting things away. Now, given that her alarm went off at 8 minutes past 9 and she claims that she left for her appointment around 9:30, meaning that it took her about 20 minutes to get ready. We know that she was not straightening up and putting things away before her appointment. And yet, apparently after her appointment, Stefan was there and they hung out together in her room until Stefan went to run his errands, and then she waited around and then went to collect Maddie. She also, I should add, said that she saw Maddie's phone in the morning when she was straightening up, whereas after Stefan left was afternoon. So we couldn't even say, well, maybe she straightened up after Stefan left. So there's some major holes in her narrative here. Her timeline doesn't fit the real timeline, and her timeline doesn't even fit her own timeline. To me, this is a major red flag. Now, I can't figure out why she has continually placed Stefan in the house when she got home from her appointment, when she has to know that he was not there. Several times she was given opportunities by the detectives to actually think it through and figure out if she was actually correct about him being in the house or not. They actually tried to tap into other sensory experiences to get her to recognise that he wasn't there. And yet she maintained that he was in the house when she got there. In fact, she became more certain over it. She went from, at the start, to, I'm going to say this, and I think he was, to at the end being very definite, yes, he was. So let's have a look at the timeline so you can see exactly where they were at what time and see why all this just doesn't work. Okay, so if we start from about 5 lines down, well, actually we might as well go up the top. So you have Jenn removing her phone from her charger at 9:19, and then sometime probably around 9:30ish, Jenn leaves the apartment. Now, I haven't been able to set that in stone, but we know that it takes her about 15 to 20 minutes to get to her appointment, and she's there at 9:59. So at the latest, she had to have left at like 9:45. And then we have that weird moment at 5 minutes past 10 when Stefan and Jenn are both, his car is in the same location as her appointment. I don't know if that means anything because it would have been so brief. But you have Stefan returning to the complex at 10:14, and he makes a phone call to Jenn at 10:17, which lasts for 8 minutes. Then at 10:54, he puts more items into the dumpster. At this stage, he's changed his clothes. I think he was wearing a red shirt in the morning. At this stage, he's changed into a blue shirt. Then he must go back to the apartment before he leaves because Maddie's phone is turned back on. That could only be done so by Stefan. And he exits the complex through the main gate at 11:03. At 11:22, he's caught on camera at the vape shop. And then Jenn returns to the apartment at 11:27. So when she returns to the apartment, he's nowhere near the apartment. He's at the vape shop in a blue shirt, not a red shirt. Now, Jenn is actually home alone for half an hour before he returns because he is caught re-entering the complex at 11:56. So she had returned at 11:27. So that you've got a half-hour period of time there where she's at the house on her own. And yet she claims that he was there. Wouldn't you recall a full half-hour period of time when you were the only person in the house? Now, while he is there with her, is when he resets the phone at 12:12, and then he leaves again at 12:44. So roughly 50 minutes they're at the house together. But not an hour and a half, which is what you would think from what Jenn has said. Now, I'm trying to figure out why it's so important for her to have him there when she returns. Because he was at the vape store, and she's told detectives that he went to the vape store. She's told them which vape store it was, so that they could actually get camera footage. So that's a major mistake there that she's made. Claiming that he's in one location and then recommending that detectives get camera footage, which will actually prove that she's lying. And I don't know if it's because maybe she is aware of him having left with Maddie in the vehicle earlier in the day and returned with Maddie in the boot. And maybe because that occurred while she was out at her appointment, maybe she thinks she's covering for that. I don't know, but I'm struggling to come up with a logical reason for her being so convinced that this thing occurred that never occurred. So I'd really love to hear what you guys think. I'd love to, help me figure this one out. Because this one's got me utterly stumped. I can imagine, you can make mistakes remembering things. But when people ask you clarifying questions, which is what the detectives were doing, that should be enough to prompt you to actually realise that, actually, no, I was wrong, that's not what happened. Several detectives gave her a range of different clarifying questions, which tapped into different sensory experiences. And yet she didn't suddenly recall that, actually, no, I was home for half an hour on my own before he got back. That never occurs. Why? I know this is probably not one of my more hard-hitting videos, because I haven't got an answer for you on this one. I'm hoping that you guys can help me figure this one out. So I'm really looking forward to seeing people's comments on this video and seeing what you think was going on here. So thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please do subscribe. I've set myself a new goal of 5,000 subscribers, which at the moment seems miles away, but you guys can help me get there. Also, please hit the like button. That gets my video out into the algorithm more, gets more people seeing my videos, and of course more people hearing Maddie's story. And lastly, please do leave a comment. I love reading everyone's comments. Definitely looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this, because it's got me stumped. And I do my best to respond to everyone's comments. I read everyone's comments, but there's so many hours in the day and there's so many comments, which is fantastic. So don't take it personally if I don't get to your comment, if I don't get a chance to respond to your comment. it's just simply, I'm trying my best, but I can't quite manage everyone's comments. So thanks, and I'll catch you in the next one.